is it?
Oh, it's in the black bag.
What? This one?
Right there, yeah, it's inside there.
What?
Okay, I've been thinking about this idea over the last few days, and I think it'd be neat to create a video series on this idea of being on the brink. I sort of feel like we're on the brink of some major change in the world. In the United States is where I live, so that's my worldview. But I think it's going to have a worldwide impact, in the same way that like the internet had a huge impact, and I don't know if I'd go as far as to say like the Industrial Revolution. I don't know if we're on that big of a change, but let me tell you about some of the things that I'm thinking about. These are kind of like topics that I would maybe cover like in individual videos. One is on robotics. They're saying that robots are already entering the workforce and are going to continue to enter the workforce in larger numbers. And I read a few books actually this past semester. I think it started actually on how to compete with robots on the job, as they are going to be coming to a job near you, like it or not. I'm a teacher, and they've already come. We're competing with online, MIT and Harvard put their videos online for free for people to watch.
And they're having a dad.
So, thank you. They're building a Burger King in my town now, and I think I heard a rumor that they're going to have robots in there flipping burgers and so forth. I mean, on the one hand, it's cool, right? But what about people that were making burgers or were driving cars, and now we have robots doing that job, and now those people go out and look for other jobs, which kind of puts downward pressure on wages, and I don't know. I have no idea. Robots are good at doing things the same way over and over and over again. They're kind of good at things that we're not good at, and vice versa. So anyway, that's like a whole 3 or 4 videos.
That's pretty like someone.
Transportation. They say that this is going to be one of the areas that's going to be hit first. I think it's like 6% of the economy in some of the states is occupied by transportation. These are like mechanics, truck drivers, taxi cab drivers, delivery drivers, and so forth. They already have self-driving cars. Granted, they're not perfect, but they're getting better. They have really smart people doing these things. And for those of you that would say, well, we're never going to have truly self-driving cars, we have 1 million people a year that are killed in automobile accidents in the world, right? So it's not like they're competing against perfection by any stretch of the imagination. So yes, self-driving cars are probably they've already hurt people. It's just a matter of, as a society, are we willing to have a few self-driving cars hurting people with the knowledge that self-driving cars are still better than human drivers? I don't know the answer to that question, but there are some countries that are already doing it. I need to move on because this is just an introduction. Transportation's big, especially since a lot of it is run by corporations, and so you're going to have places like Domino's or trucking companies that are mostly focused on, well, not mostly, they think a lot about bottom dollars, and so if they can save millions of dollars by employing robots, then they are likely to do that. And maybe you or I would I want to drive myself. Okay, but it may hit the business world first. So anyway, culture. Since 2016, I've become really aware that the cultures in the United States were different. There are a lot of people who don't think like I do, right? I was very shocked to see Donald Trump become elected president, and I think it's more than just him as an individual. I think the idea that there are a lot of people, I know, right, don't think like I do, and that was just really a surprise for me, and I keep thinking that's going to change, and it doesn't. And so I feel like we're very divided, and I don't know what that's going to look like when something big comes up, like an economic crisis, kind of like what might happen if some of these things come true. So I'm also concerned for evangelical churches, of which I thought I was evangelical, but now evangelicalism kind of means something like political, so I'm not really sure if I am. But I'm concerned with their ability to attract new believers into their churches, especially since so many Americans associate evangelicals with conservative Republicans who vote for Trump. And I feel like even that, like, conservative politics used to mean something else. It used to mean fair trade, it used to mean small government. Now it just seems to mean something else about, like, attitude or the sense of a lost part of the past. And it's not even about ideology. It doesn't seem anymore. And so I think that a lot of people who are not conservative, like myself, although I have some conservative ideas, would say, I understand where conservatives would come from. Like, I can see some of the positive parts of small government, and I can see some of the positive parts to conservative social values. I am struggling to find some positives to some of the things that evangelicals get behind, especially as it relates to the current federal administration. So I'm just concerned that they are losing their voice in America, that they're going to have a hard time recruiting new people into the gospel, into their way of introducing them to Jesus, and that's a real issue, especially since that's kind of what they're supposed to be about. We're supposed to be about. So I get distracted too, so I'm not saying that they're doing things that I'm not doing as well. Healthcare. As more and more people age, large percentages, like more than we've ever seen before, I think. And certainly in this country, more and more people, more elderly people, percentage-wise. Yeah, isn't there a play button? You got it. And that's expensive because we've gotten much better at treating health-related issues, but it's really expensive. It's really expensive, and it's really hard to say no to people when there's a new drug, a new treatment that's really awesome and could really help people's health, and it's $50,000. It's $30,000 a year for the rest of their life, something like that. And the government sort of tried to rein in healthcare costs, like with the Affordable Care Act, and that has been the most hated piece of legislation probably ever. So I know a lot of that was just political mumbo jumbo, but it seems to have worked. It certainly didn't contain costs. I granted it's not the Affordable Care Act, at least not only in name. But the idea, I suppose, was to try to contain costs. So I don't know if we're going to do socialized medicine. I kind of hope we do. We spend so much money on healthcare, more than any other country in the world by far, but we don't get the results that a lot of the socialized medicine countries do. So anyway, healthcare, I think, is a big deal, especially since we have lots of obesity, and I mentioned allergies among children, a lot of immune disorders among adults, and that's not cheap. And in regards to healthcare, is one other thing. They sequenced the human genome, 10 years or so ago, and they're now taking that information and trying to specialize it to each individual person. China, I think, actually is trying to get on board with this, so that today if you go to your doctor and they give you a prescription for medication, if you're like big, they give you a big amount, and if you're small, they give you a smaller amount, but that's basically all the specialization you get. It could be that in the future, like if they have your DNA, and you say, hey, I'm of Polish French origin and I weigh 185 pounds, I got high blood pressure and my mother died of whatever, like they're going to have like a specific amount or a specific type of medication that's like especially made for you. It sounds pretty incredible and expensive, but anyway, this could be something that is coming to a pharmacy. There are more things that I'm sure I could think of and I could try to remember, because I did a whole talk on this topic a few months ago. But it just seems like we're at this place socially where we could have dramatic changes. And I think we're in total denial. I could be totally wrong, by the way. But there's just a lot of really smart people that say that we're on the brink of something major. And it's usually better when people kind of plan for it and take steps to anticipate major changes. And for the people groups that do, typically like the dominant, richer ones kind of anticipate that stuff, they usually end up being better off. Our government could be way better off if they would anticipate some of this stuff. Otherwise, we just become reactionary. We just like, oh, it's just we just have to. We're forced to, and that's never as good. So anyway, I don't mean for this to be scary. I think some of this stuff could be really, really cool. I hope to eliminate lots of diseases. I hope that everyone's life becomes simpler because robots take away some of the drama and the hatred that people have of their jobs. So that is certainly possible. But I also think that it's possible for it to go the other way, and it could be dramatic and awful. So anyways, that is the outline of On the Brink video series.
What's on the brink?